Oh, I'm sorry.
I was watching last week, and I think you made a mistake when you were.
You will be silent! Okay. Sanctification versus justification. And this is a common mistake we make here all the time. And then we get it turned around and we apply it in a way that's kind of silly sometimes. And so, for instance, what is sanctification?
Process that we go through after we get saved, the Holy Spirit, as we get transformed into Jesus.
Yes. I like that. It's a process. It's ongoing. It's not completed until the rapture or we die. Yeah, that's it. That's sanctification. Now, what is justification?
God justifying you before himself as though you'd never sinned with the blood of Jesus.
A one-time, instantaneous thing that happens right at your salvation. And can you improve upon justification?
No, it's a gift.
It's a gift. And that's declaring just, you hear that thing, just as if I have never sinned. In other words, a judicial ruling that says you are innocent. That's the ruling, but are you innocent? No, it's just that someone else took the penalty, took your sin, your crime, and paid for it. So it's a ruling that says you are innocent, okay? And that's a one-time thing at salvation, can never prove, it's binary, either yes or no. Either happens or it doesn't. Once it happens, then you can't make it any better. Whereas sanctification, like you said, is a process. We're going to go through tribulation, we knock off the rough edges, okay? And so it's kind of sometimes applied like, let's see, I got to think of an example. It drives me crazy every time I hear it. It's kind of applied like this. It's like, if you're doing something, you're out there serving God, it's like, well, you're just trying to earn his love. Yeah, or you're trying to earn salvation, okay? It's kind of applied like that. And they get two things mixed up, justification and sanctification. You guys understand my point? And so, yeah, works salvation, or you're trying to earn his love or something. But really and truly, that's the sanctification. I hope God keeps me busy. He said in one of the parables is to occupy until I come, right? And so I know for me, I've been on this incredible ride, just full blast down the highway. And for a lot of you guys, and like Scott had prayed, a lot of you guys are going through different things. That's a sanctification process, okay? And so it's easy to get the two mixed up. It's just like we love him because, yeah. So we can't sit there and say, look, I love God. No, it's because he first loved me and reached down to me a sinner. So anyways, that just always, I hear that a lot, and it's just like, how people mix that around. So kind of, and then another thing I've noticed is when I go around and I talk to people, I do this on purpose. I do it as a joke now to tweak people. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't do that, okay? And I say, well, I think Jesus is coming back soon. Oh, I'm not worried about that, brother. I'm just busy with the Lord's work. It's kind of like that. Not understanding about Revelation 19:10. See, when you say Jesus is coming back soon, that's one thing. Yeah. It might be in 100 years, might be tomorrow. We don't know. But when you say something like that is concrete, like maybe this month, I didn't even put a date. I just said, I said, I think he's coming back this month. Then you're in trouble. Because at church. Yeah. So, okay. I got those two things off my chest. Okay. Woo. All right. So we're going through the feast, Leviticus 23, the 7 feasts. We find out from the language that the feasts are prophetic, right? The feasts are called God's holy convocations. His what? His holy mikras, right? Mikra. Which is his holy rehearsals, his holy dress rehearsals. It's also called, the 7 feasts are called his appointed times, his moedim. Remember that word? That fancy word, moedim, which means signal or sign. So we started saying, hey, wait a minute. These feasts are prophetic. Then we went to the First Corinthians, and we saw a code there, right? Now, it's not a code I made out or contrived. I had to really try to extract, right? It was there. For Paul, writing to this church that he was there for a year and a half, so he actually celebrated the feast with these people. Is it okay to celebrate the feast of Leviticus? Okay, good. It is okay. And then we saw a pattern. In 1 Corinthians, so at the rapture, what happens? Now the bride, recall, Paul said, I betroth you to one husband, Jesus. You know, you're the virgin bride, is taken at the rapture to heaven by the groom, John 14, okay, to his father's house for the marriage feast, Revelation 19. All right, so all that's happening in this. Now, let's get into the model for the Feast of Trumpets. And what we're going to do is go over real thoroughly just what is the Feast of Trumpets. I want you to know it, learn it. And there's all kinds of little things that are going to come out that just blew my mind as I researched this and stuff. What did the Jews call it? And you might wonder, why in the world they call it that? But we as Christians look at that and it's just like, that's a model of the rapture. Okay? Now, let's look at some of the basics. The name, all right? So in Leviticus 23:24, it says this. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying in the 7th month, okay, in the first day of the month, so we know that's trumpets. Anytime you've seen the Bible, 7th month, first day, that's the Feast of Trumpets, all right? Now we're on the Feast of Trumpets. It's really keying on that. The name, Leviticus 23:24. He's saying this, speak unto the children of Israel, saying in the 7th month and the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath. Now, does that mean it's on Saturday? A day of rest. Okay, and so Sabbaths can be the 7th day of the week, or they can be one of the high holy days, which is why some people get confused, like when the resurrection happened and when he was crucified and all that. Which one is it? The feast or whatever? So, but he says, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. And actually, the funny thing is, in that verse, it doesn't say trumpets. I mean, the English does. In the Hebrew, what it says is, you shall have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of air, exhaling of air, or a trumpeting, a holy convocation. Trumpets not even mentioned, which is where they get the name Yom Teruah. It's the day of exhaling air or blowing or trumpeting. So it doesn't even appear there. It does appear in other places, so we know it's a shofar, just so you know. So when you hear the day Yom Teruah, it's not actually day of trumpets. It's actually day of trumpeting, let's say. Hey, I'll give you a quick little analogy here, bringing up Jericho, right? They come into the promised land. That's their first conquest, right? How many days they march around? They have to blow 7 trumpets.
6 days they march, 7th day they.
Yes. And then that's actually pictured in the book of Revelation with the 7 trumpets. The book of Joshua is a typology of the book of Revelation. Because Joshua is really what name? Jesus. Yeshua. Yeshua goes and conquers 7 nations in 7 years and takes the land. And that's what happens in the book of Revelation. In 7 years, he conquers 7 nations. Remember the creature that comes out in Revelation 13 out of the sea, right? 10 heads and 7 horns. And it gets deep, but it's really or how about in Jericho? What did they send into the city before they conquer it? Which actually, they're not really spies. You know why? Because what did they bring back that helped the battle plan? March around the city for 7 days and then blow trumpets? That didn't help. They were witnesses. He sends in 2 witnesses to save a Gentile. Get it? Yeah, so Revelation 11, 2 witnesses. So as you go through all that, and then there's a part in Joshua where the kings try to hide in caves. In Revelation, the kings of the earth say, rocks fall on us and they're hiding in caves. So there's a lot of deep typology there as you go through it. A lot of lessons you can learn. What do they say? The Old Testament is in the New Testament revealed, and then the New Testament is in the Old Testament concealed. Okay, it's all there. Remember, repeating patterns in history and in prophecy. If you can look at it a certain way, which is why we've gone through all this, is to look at it a more Jewish way, a really a more biblical way. That's why when you go through the book of Revelation, I forget how many passages it has. I'm going to make up a number. It has like 300 verses, and out of there's like over 300 allusions to the Old Testament. It's got more allusions to the Old Testament than it actually has passages. In fact, I remember one prophecy teacher saying that he showed it to a Jewish rabbi and told him to look at it, and all the Jewish rabbis said, all this is someone took a bunch of Old Testament passages and strung them together. See, that was his viewpoint because he knows the Old Testament, whereas we look at it and we're like, what does this mean? Where did this come? We don't know. It's all in the Old Testament. Okay, it puts it together. So, like for instance, if you want to find out about Babylon, what do? You read 3 sets of chapters, right? Isaiah 13 and 14, Jeremiah 15, 51, and Revelation 17 and 18 all together. Then you get a complete picture of Babylon. And remember, people think Babylon was destroyed. It wasn't. And in fact, guess what was the capital for Alexander the Great? Babylon was the capital. And Saddam Hussein was rebuilding it, and it will rise back up because I just think the Bible's literal. And people say, well, it's New York City. Well, New York City could be a type of Babylon. I'll give them that, a type at a certain level. But the Peshat, it's going to be Babylon. It's going to come back. And we look at that and say, well, how could that be? How could any of this stuff that is going on be, right? How could any of it be? So we see here in Leviticus 23:24, Yom Teruah, day of blowing or day of exhaling airs, what actually it literally means. And the funny thing is, they call it that, Yom Teruah, and at the day of the rapture, what do we hear? A trumpet, right? 1 Corinthians 15, 51 and 52, 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17, right? A trumpeting. Okay, now, we'll talk about the 2-day feast. Why did they have it for 2 days? Well, according to their own ancient writings, what happened was after we get off the 30-day cycle, during the time they call it, in their writings, they call it the period of the prophets. You have this month before you have Tishrei, which is the 7th month, Elul. It has 29 days. Okay, so they're always having to adjust the calendar and stuff, which means the next day would be the first day of the 7th month. But how can you tell? How can you tell that's the day of trumpets? There's an actual astronomical way you could tell. No, new moon. When you have that kind of calendar and it's off kilter because something has happened, probably in 702 BC is where many people trace it with Hezekiah, the stairwell going backwards instead of forward or whatever. Maybe something happened then. So people have different theories. That's most likely. Then all of a sudden you weren't on a 30-day rotation. And you weren't exactly sure when the moon was going to be a new moon. Completely blacked out. Here's how it worked. When does the day start for the Jew? You say at nightfall, but there's an official way. When the sun goes down, in the first, it's like 2 or 3 stars appear in the sky. And you have 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 or 3 witnesses, but every fact is to be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses, right? Then they come to the temple, report to the priest. They have, that the the moon was full or new, and then that was officially the day of trumpets. But here's something else. What if it turns out there was a little sliver there and everybody was ready for trumpets and they got ready and they started, preparing and they were ready for it. But it was a little sliver and it turns out the next day's trumpets. So what do you do to fix that? You make it a 2-day feast. Get it? That's why it's a 2-day feast to this day, even though now they know for sure. And the first day of trumpets is the real day. The second day is, the day that they kept. All right? Does that make sense, everybody? So of all the feasts, there's only one feast that is the first of the month, the Feast of Trumpets. That's why it's called, yeah, the day that no man knows. Yes, because now you understand why? It's the first of the month. Now here's another analogy I think that God showed me. Remember like in the Epistle of Barnabas, early Christian document, that's not the Bible. No, it's an early Christian document where they said the church would be here for 2,000 years. How did they know that? Way back in the early church, they said the church age would last for only 2,000 years.
Because the day to the Lord is 1,000 years and 1,000 years.
Yes.
And it follows the creation.
Yes. And they say this explicitly. In fact, I'll read it explicitly later. They said, as in their 7 days, or 6 days in creation, then a 7th day of rest. In the same way, there's going to be 6,000 years that man labors, in a 7th 1,000 year where he has rest, i.e. the millennial kingdom. And the church came at the 4,000 year point. And so they said, oh, we got 2,000 more years to go until Christ comes back. Get it? They hit it right on the head. It's amazing. So in this way, so now Feast of Trumpets which represents the church, is a 2-day feast, as in we're here for 2,000 years. A little remnant is hidden in there. Okay? It's
What about the Jewish year? Aren't there like 5,700 something?
yes. Yeah. It's like 5784 or something. It's somewhere around there. They have a whole different accounting than us. Because they obviously don't go negative until they hit Christ and go forward. They're going to ignore him. So they're saying from creation. And actually, I'm going to use the Jewish calendar and what those numbers mean, like for this year and next year and all that. Because all you got to do is take 5784 and take it to the Paleo Hebrew. And you come out with surprising things. In fact, God showed me something about Rosh Hashanah on the Paleo Hebrew that blew me away today. Okay, now, here's what the Jews did. They said, okay, we got 2 days now. So now they consider the 2 days for the Feast of Trumpets. In their mind, that's one long day. They don't consider it 2 separate days. So they said, let's just make it one long day. Okay? And I thought that was kind of interesting. To the Jews, Feast of Trumpets is one long day, an extra long day. To us, it's the twinkling of an eye. 1 Corinthians 15:51. In the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. You see kind of the contrast? They make it a long feast, and yet to us, it's very fast that we're going to be caught up. We're going to go through Feast of Trumpet passages and just kind of cover it a little more thorough. All right? Did I write those down? Yes, right here. So it doesn't have very many passages. So we know now it's 2-day feast because it was the only one that began the month, and that's why it's the feast that no man knows the day or the hour. Now you understand that, all right? And there's only like about 5 passages that refer to it. So in the first one, we saw in Leviticus 23 and 24, and it says, basically don't do any work and blow a trumpet. All right, not much to it. Numbers 26, 1 through 6, talks about the sacrifices that you have on that day. Okay, all the feasts have sacrifices of some kind. So you can go through that. Okay, now I'm going to read Psalms 81, 3 and 4. You guys should be keen enough that if you heard this before you were in here or after you're in here, you should know, oh, that's Feast of Trumpets. Listen to this. Blow up the trumpet, okay, that's shofar, in the new moon, in the appointed time, in the moed, at the appointed time of our solemn feast day. For this was the statute in Israel and the law of God in Jacob. So he's saying, on the new moon, there's a feast that you blow the trumpet. What is that? It's got to be Feast of Trumpets. It's the only one that occurs on the new moon, on the first of the month. Okay, so now you're getting a little more keen. Now here's something interesting. Is in Ezra 3:6, trumpet was reinstituted in Jerusalem at the rebuilt temple. Remember Ezra and Nehemiah, they go back and rebuild the temple. Okay, it says, from the first day of the 7th month, they began to offer burnt offerings, which is what you offer in Numbers, unto the Lord. But the foundation of the temple of the Lord was not laid from the first day of the 7th month. So they actually, in the new temple, began sacrifices on the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, and then lastly, in Nehemiah 2 and 3, Ezra the priest brought forth the law and he read it on the 7th month, first day. The Feast of Trumpets. So there's a lot going on Feast of Trumpets. Oh, and the only place it's called Rosh Hashanah is Ezekiel 40, chapter 40, verse 1. Okay. In the Hebrew, it's called Rosh Hashanah. You read it's like the beginning of the year or something. Okay. You know what? I got exactly to where I said I was going to be. Okay. Which is good. So trumpets. So we're just going through trumpets, getting a real feel and taste. The next time, we're going to talk about things that they call the day, and I'll go ahead and do this as a preview. One of the things that the Jews called the feast, get this, the Feast of Trumpets is, they said it was the wedding day of the Messiah. How would they know that? They don't know about any rapture or anything. And actually, I saw Mark's book there in the bathroom that Lisa had put. And it said, the rapture, wedding day of the Lord. That's what it is, and that's what he called it. And so I'm thinking, okay, I got to teach that. And there it is looking at me. Isn't that funny? Yeah, the wedding day of the Lord. That's exactly, or they call it the wedding day of the Messiah. Okay? And that's exactly what the Feast of Trumpets is. And so we're going to go through all the things that they call it. And when you hear it, it's going to blow you away. It's just like they were Christians purposely superimposing titles on the Feast of Trumpets to make it the rapture. That's not what happened. We're talking about Jews who put it on there.
So, why do they call it the new year if it's the 7th month, not
Oh.
the first month?
Good question.
Because of Exodus 12, verse 2 or 3. And here's what happened. The 7th month used to be the first month. And the first month used to be the 7th month. There was a 6-month switch. And if you read that passage in Exodus, when they're doing the Passover, it used to be the 7th month. God said, this shall be the beginning of months for you. So the 7th month became the first month. Does that make sense?
So don't they have two calendars? They have a religious calendar and a secular calendar?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
So-
Exodus 12 what?
12:2, I think. If it's not 12:2, it's 12:3. Okay, it's one of those two where he says, this shall be the beginning of months for you. So, yes. So it's just like as you go through and stuff, before Exodus 12, they're on the old calendar system. And now we're on the new calendar system after Exodus 12, if that makes any sense. So think about it. If Rosh Hashanah was originally the first month and first day, and you take it all the way back, wouldn't that be the first day of creation? Right?
Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah, 7th month, first day which was originally the first month, first day, under the original calendar, okay, before it was changed in Exodus 12. If it was the first month, first day, wouldn't that be the first day of creation? If you take it back for nothing, use logic. You see what I'm saying? Rosh Hashanah. And there's something really amazing in the name of Rosh Hashanah. I mean, God showed me it today, and it blew me away, because it's going to use Paleo-Hebrew, and you're going to see two different heads, and they're both going to represent the rapture. Like one head's looking up, and the other head you see the back of. One's looking up as in the rapture's coming, and the other one you see the back of his head as in he's gone. I know, I'm going to leave it very... And that is your homework assignment, Lisa. You need to unravel that. Where did I get the front of the head? One head looking up and the back of another head, okay? It's amazing. I'm serious. As you get further into this, God shows you things, and they all just... It's like, what? What's going on? And I was at a friend's house, one that Saturday, and one of the very probable dates of the year of Jubilee was 2030. And this friend had to go in the house. Another one of the, things like this. And I'm looking at the fence, and there's that person's address. It's 2030, and I'm looking at that and saying, why does that look familiar? So just remember this, 1 Corinthians code, we know this verifiably, that of the 7 feasts, in the order they fall in the calendar year, the first 4, we know for a fact, it's not me guessing or contriving something, they were all fulfilled in the order of the feast on the very day, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's with that. I've gone through that ad nauseum. And there's only 3 feasts remaining, and people really get nervous and mad at me when I say, I think they're going to be fulfilled in order and on that day. They blow their top. It's just like people who say the second coming of Christ, and they spiritualize away all the text. When the first coming of Christ, all the prophecies were literal. Right there. Well, what does it mean when it says he's going to come from Bethlehem? Oh, probably he's going to come from Bethlehem. What does it mean when it says he's born of a virgin? Oh, that means he's born of a virgin. Then you get into the second coming passages, and it's all spiritualized away. You see what I'm saying? We do a switcheroony. That's a technical theological term. The switcheroony. And it's just like, I'll read it for you later.